Alright, good morning, welcome. I'd like to go over some notable news stories. Before I go over them, I have this disclaimer. I'd like to let you know this is for review, information, and educational purposes. It's not to take the credit for the article. Credit for the article in this case goes to the publisher, which is in this case, which meaning it's CNET. If I can go back to it here. And the story by Katie Collins. With that out of the way, let's go into the article. Headline reads, Phones with replaceable batteries, how they might make a comeback. If you can remember in the past, when you bought a phone, you could replace the battery. Batteries were replaceable, it was very convenient. Now, as you can tell, if you notice with the newer phones, I don't know, for the past, probably since 2014, 15, or 16, they completely changed the design around where the battery is internal. Sort of like if you look at the laptops over the past 3 to 4 years, they also went to a non-replaceable battery design. Technically, you could take the battery out, but it can't be swapped out so easily. You need to have special tools to take it out of the case. And then you need to be careful so that way you don't short a copper connection or something in the laptop, just like, for example, on your phone. Okay? My understanding is it was soldered in, meaning they take the copper wire or whatever wire, it gets fused with a soldering iron and fuses that together to the metal case. That way, the battery doesn't fall out, but the way the design is made, that it's somehow better. I'm not exactly sure how or why, but that it is what it is. But with this, it says phones of the future you'll be able to replace a battery yourself, which is what happened before this. Once upon a time, by which we mean the 90s and the early 2000s, you wanted to swap out your phone's battery for a new one. All you had to do was slide the back casing open, pop the battery out. The rise of sleek but impenetrable smartphones largely saw an end-to-user replaceable batteries, but now in the mid-2020s, the tide could be turning once again. Two separate pieces of right-to-repair legislation working their way through the European Union institutions, one of which was passed by European Parliament at the end of June, could force phone manufacturers to make significant changes to the way they design phones. Once they come into force, expected by the end of 2025 and 2027 respectively, they'll put in place regulations that can compel makers of phones and other small devices like portable game consoles to allow people to replace the batteries themselves. As a smartphone owner, you're likely to be familiar with specific frustrations batteries pose, namely the drop-off in maximum capacity over time and inability to cheaply and easily do anything to fix it. If you're able to switch the battery out, you could well end up keeping your phone for a prolonged period. Okay. Battery, and as he quotes it here, battery degradation is a major reason for considering an upgrade, said CCS Insight Chief Analyst Ben Wood over email. Now, I don't have proof of this. I can only suspect, at least for the time being, the reason why they made this change was so they can control the technical support aspect of it and also influence you to buy a new phone. I suspect, as it is with most things in business, it's connected to money. So, anyway, if it was a superior design, the customer had options in terms replacing or not replacing, and that would be different. But in this case, um, not so that's not so available. Anyway, just my take on it. That's why I said this is also for review purposes. As I said first, because I will give my commentary and opinions where it's relevant and appropriate. Now, increasingly, phone manufacturers such as Apple, Samsung, and HMD, which makes Nokia phones, are trying to make their devices more easily repairable at home. Since the start of this year, HMD has introduced two phones in which batteries will be quickly replaced by the owner, although it does require an iFixit toolkit to do so. Repairing smartphones are largely been a specialist job. With more power to fix devices, the hope is that you'll be less likely to discard them in favor of newer models, reducing the overall amount of electronic waste that comes from broken or aging products. Now, if you look at the last sentence, this gives you a clue of what's the one influence, making reducing the overall amount of electronic waste, see, and comes from broken or aging products. Okay. Now, there is another issue which I suspect is related, is the fact that there is a finite amount of materials such as cobalt and other electronics components. And considering it comes from some countries in which they have this supply, it would be more beneficial for manufacturers to make something where they don't have to keep using new materials to build things. Now, it's possible that you can recycle your phone like you've been able to do for the past 20 something years, but anyway, I suspect that has something to do with it. In addition to trying to get people to buy a new phone because of whatever issues. And then, of course, although it may be under warranty, the inconvenience of not having a phone for who knows how long, week, month, whatever, is also a factor from the customer's point of view. Well, by empowering consumers with the ability to replace a worn out battery themselves, it means that they can keep hold of their device for longer, says Lars Silberbauer, Chief Marketing Officer at HMD, which welcomed EU's proposals on replaceable batteries. It also makes repairing a smartphone more affordable. Yes, you have to consider that by having this specialty repair, it's creating an industry, and one industry scratches the backs of another industry. Now, the iFixit is pretty much just for electronics in general because I've used it for laptop parts as well. So definitely something you should have. Not too expensive and definitely worth it. Now, but abiding by the new rules is going to mean having to solve some tricky engineering challenges for companies aiming to comply. One phone maker, Fairphone, has pioneered making phones with fully user replaceable batteries. As they told me, it's not an easy feat. More on that below. I will say, for example, the consoles from before, not the handheld consoles, or as I would call them, the portable consoles. But for example, if you look at like your Nintendo, early Nintendo consoles, all the other consoles, you have to have it plugged in. And I don't know if there's a battery, but it's basically a power supply because you have to have a steady stream of current flow to power the device itself, which is another limitation. I think you should have a battery you can charge that is replaceable. That way you don't have to always have it. Okay, so anyway, but a buying, okay, so here we go. Any rules that do end up coming into a force around user replaceable batteries will only apply to phones sold within the EU. There is a precedent for European regulations spurring tech companies to make changes that affect their products wherever they're sold. Prime example is the European mandate for universal chargers. Chargers that can be used across entire devices category, which was finalized in October 2022, will come into force next year. It's expected to cause Apple to switch away from using Lightning connectors for the iPhone and more common USB-C found on almost all Android phones. So I'm not really sure what the connection between. I don't mean this physically connection, but what's the relationship between a data port slash power port and the battery itself? As in, if you how would that affect if it's replaceable or not replaceable? I'm not clear on that because I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm not sure. But apparently, according to this article, they're they're implying that there is a relationship or connection between the two, and also literally a connection, as an electronic connection between that port and the battery. So you have connect. What happens is on the battery you have what are called contacts. Contacts serve as an electrical conduit between that part of the actual module, as in part of the console, and the actual battery with electrical current flow going through them. Now, Apple and Samsung didn't respond to requests for comment regarding the impending regulations. Keep in mind between 2025 and 2027, so technically, whereas 2023 they still have time, so technically they could probably release something for next year and then have another one by 2025. So it depends on how they do it. Them being able to figure out the feasibility of it is something that's their concern. But it's reasonable to think that Apple and other phone makers are forced to make devices that include user replaceable batteries for one market. They may also sell those devices elsewhere. So in the European Union, but they might, for example, they might make ones that are for, let's say, other countries that don't have those regulations, and then the other ones replaceable ones in the European Union. Okay. Now, making batteries replaceable. To understand the challenges as well as the pros and cons of making such a device, I asked Fairphone, a company that has already made a phone with such an easily replaceable battery, what's involved. Miguel Ballester, Fairphone's head of product development and one of its founders, there's nothing novel about being able to replace a phone's battery. That's what I said before. And the question becomes, what did they do before the phone wasn't, the battery wasn't replaceable? See? It's just that you get used to a certain way, and then what do you do after that? Okay. Well, anyway, it's instead a choice that manufacturers have made as phones have trended thinner and thinner. He said, and while battery capacities have improved over the years, the basic chemistry that causes them to grade over time has not. So I guess you're going to have to hire some chemical engineers to figure that out. And he says that's a fact, and that has not changed since we had the old Nokias that had all the replaceable batteries, he said. So here you can see the layout. Now this is from iFixit. This is the outer case, that's the replaceable battery. This is the componentry. This is another battery, this is another piece. This would be the what they call the back screen. Front, which is this part, the black part, and the other side is called the front screen. Then you have the other electronics behind it. It's almost glued or screwed onto the case. So Fairphone already makes phones with replaceable batteries. So What it might be is that because they're already ahead of the curve, they might be able to get market share quicker. They might be able to get more sales because they're already in compliance. It's only a question of features that if their features are competitive with similarly priced phones with similar specifications. Fairphone isn't just a phone maker. Its mission is to challenge the electronics industry to create devices that are longer lasting and easier to repair. All of the phones the company has made are modular, so they can be taken apart and put back together by anyone. Even someone like me, referring to the author, who has little experience in electronics other than casual soldering, can do it. And he says, and I have. Now, most people don't use soldering guns unless they are working on specifically those types of things. So the general public, I don't think, is working with soldering. Is doing any soldering. Okay? Now, by making a phone this way, it comes with compromises, as Ballister well knows. Having a fully integrated battery that's glued, here's what it is: it's glued into a smartphone, creates a very stable connection between the power module and other components. So instead of saying power supply, which is more like for desktop PCs, desktops, they say a power module, right? And other components. A replaceable battery can boast the same level of stability, meaning the connection is more likely to be interrupted if the phone is dropped or if the speck of dust finds its way onto the connector. So I guess maybe that's the reason for the design. The question is, what happened before? I can see that the screen itself could be easily broken, but I know Samsung, they made the cases much stronger. And then you have these plastic, like, what do you call them, sleeves? It very much protects the bottom of the phone. Okay. Now, by the way, it's very difficult to open up the phone the way it is. You need special tools to do it. The average person probably doesn't have that. Here's a side where you can take out. Um, maybe it's not in there. I think on the newer phones, there's a place you can put another SIM. Some of the phones have a place where you can put another memory card, or what they call SD card, extra storage, as in storage of data. iPhone doesn't have such a slot. I think it'd be better to do it because you get more storage, but it's probably more expensive to produce if I were to guess. Anyway, okay. In 2016, LG tried its luck with modular phones. GS, in the waning days of phones with batteries you can remove. So I believe it's all the way up to 2016. CNET's reviewer told that GS's removable battery was the most appealing aspect of the design. Well, from a usability standpoint, yes. Maybe not from a technical standpoint, but from a usability because, um, let's say you have one battery, right? And it's not, let's say your one battery is about to die, right? It's about to be fully discharged, right? Of electrical power. You can get a fully charged battery and then replace it. So what people are doing, you're buying an extra battery. Right? Turn off the other, or just take out the battery. Probably it's better to shut off the smartphone itself. What they do is shut off the smartphone, take the case off, take the battery out, and then swap out the battery. So, then so you don't have to go and wait to charge the thing. You have an extra battery. Well, another reason why they possibly might have had to design it, maybe also for logistical purposes, because batteries, I think a cell phone battery is probably okay, but mass amounts of batteries carry some risk that if it gets punctured, it could be an explosion, which could cause a flammable, like a flammable explosion. So what happens? My understanding was, well, 12 or so years ago, um, when they were to ship the batteries out, it would go on a ship instead of a plane because of the puncture and or explosive risk. Because if that battery ever gets punctured or anything ever makes it explode, when it explodes, there's can cause fire basically. Any number of factors making the phone explode. So that's what they said, but everybody brings their smartphone on planes. Nothing happens, so I'm not sure where they came from, but that's what it was. And that's probably what led up to in terms of on the wholesaler distributor end. Now, dust and water can be a problem for the modular phones. The Fairphone 4 which just arrived in the U.S., is a company. The first device came from waterproof rating, which is IPS4, and is lower than most top-end models, such as the iPhone 14 has an IP rating of 68. Ballister sees that less of an issue, giving most people replace their phones these days, not because they get a bit wet, but because of the battery, the software, or the smash screen. But the thing with the screen is it's not that expensive to replace the screen. Now um, the back screen and the front screen is what's expensive, not the actual screen itself. And then there's another way is that there's a new repair machine that can repair actual screens itself if it's not damaged too much. It looks brand new. Basically, what it does is it takes something of the same materials and it fills in the gaps so well that you don't even notice that it actually did it. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Replaceable batteries also live in a bulkier housing to ensure that they match the glued-in counterparts for robustness and reliability. And he said you need to think about the architecture of the phone differently, and you may not be able to deliver in those super thin ratios that we're seeing in the market. Ballister said, with the housing taking up more space, phone makers also have to opt for lower capacity batteries, he said. In other words, replaceable batteries could lead to chunkier phones with less battery life. Despite this, the Fairphone 4 still provides enough juice in one charge to last a day, according to Ballister. Unlike the flagship phones on the market, it won't stretch to 1.5 or 2 days, he said. It just won't yet. So probably referring to the phone being on standby where you're not using the phone. But if you have the phone's like what they call the backlight, if that's on, we'll use a lot more of the battery. Versus if you have the backlight off, otherwise known as the screen off, it's supposed to be lasting for days. So that's basically what it is. Challenges and promises. The obvious benefit of having a replaceable battery is that if your existing one is causing you issues and not lasting the full day, you can swap it out for a new one. Which is what I talked about. I can remember even back in 2005, 2006. That's how it used to work. But this relies on the same exact battery still being available up to several years after you've used your first bought after you first bought your phone. Um, there are people who just specialize in selling batteries. Even if, for example, if you look at the older design of laptops, this is still goes with the same idea. Laptops also are getting much thinner as well, so um, they basically have laptop batteries as well that you can buy from whatever makes and models as well. Now, spare batteries can't just sit around the shelf waiting to be used, as they too will degrade over time. Persuading suppliers to keep making battery replacements can be a challenge to Palliser, as the volumes are often too low. He's confident, though, that if replaceable batteries became the norm for phone makers, it will be much easier to get a hold of, because of course there will be a demand for it. At the other end of the phone's life cycle, having a replaceable battery is hugely beneficial in the recycling process. The most valuable part of the battery is cobalt, which I mentioned. This is a rock or a stone that is naturally occurring from the earth, I believe. It is poisonous as far as I know, but yeah, I believe it's either naturally occurring or let me check this out. Cobalt. Okay, it is naturally occurring. It's a chemical element with the symbol CO with atomic number 27. As with nickel, cobalt is found in the Earth's crust only in a chemically combined form. So technically, it is a compound, but it's a it's a naturally occurring element that's made of multiple chemicals, or multiple in this case, multiple elements. So it says it's in a chemically combined form, save for small deposits found in alloys of natural metallic iron. Free element produced by reductive smelting is a hard lustrous metal. So naturally occurring stuff, that's where they mine it from. Anyway, the result of it through a natural process called cobalt. Okay, that's what's in electronics, as I was mentioning earlier. Okay, so if you remember in the past when you had a phone, a mobile phone, you could replace all of the phone can be replaced and recycled. Basically, what they do, they'd have these places where you just drop off your phone if you don't need it anymore, and then they recycle those phones. Also, a lot of times manufacturers will trade in your old phone for the new phone, and the reason why they do that is because not only there is a difference in the price. Also, the old phone still has some value because it can be recycled, it can be used, it can be used for refurbishing, repairing, or for parts. So there's some value to it, and it still works, I suppose. So, like technically, they could probably still sell it. And then, of course, because they're going to be selling you the new phone, which the net result is that you have to pay the difference, so there's money to be made. But yes, the good thing is it's easy to recycle. But if batteries are replaceable, they can be easily extracted from the phones and recycled separately, as I just mentioned a moment ago. Right now, that's happening enough since ballast. You see a picture. The cobalt recyclers are struggling to have enough volume to have a good business case for cobalt recycling. So we need to increase the amount of batteries that go back, he said. So this is what I'm saying is supply chain issues. Notice they had supply chain issues from China. Also, you need the raw materials as well to manufacture components. Okay, so that's another issue. So if that's also at a shortage, this would influence the industry to go in that direction. Okay, so recycling batteries separately allows for materials to be extracted. So basically, you take the chemistry of a battery, disassemble it, they take the parts out of it, and they use it for something else. And he says and then the author goes on to say that he hopes that more phones with replaceable batteries will bolster the amount of cobalt recycling that can take place. Equally, he hopes that as battery technology continues to improve, there won't be a need to be a discussion about the amount of energy a replaceable battery can hold compared to a fixed module. Phone manufacturers now think about how they make devices with replaceable batteries. Perhaps perhaps for the very first time, it's clear that some compromises may be required along the way. But with cross-industry effort, there are significant opportunities to overcome the hurdles that companies like Fairphone are already facing head-on. In doing so, they might just ensure the next generation of phones stay longer in our pockets and ease the pressure on the planet in the process. So you see that last part of that. Ease the pressure on the planet. Yeah, so there is an environmental influence to this as well. I think I will decline to give my opinion on that because it is sensitive to social and political causes, of which is not my purpose for reviewing this article, and it's kind of like the saying risk versus rewards. I won't talk about my opinion. In fact, even more so, the point is just to give the facts of the article and let you decide on your own conclusion and what you think it means to you. Alright, so that's that one article. Now, with the next one. Let's talk about the next one by CNET. This is, I believe, by the same company, right? CNET, yeah. If you didn't know, CNET is basically a technology media company. Basically, a media company that just mostly reports on technology-related news. Excuse me. Now, the next article I will reiterate what I was saying earlier, which is that the purpose of this review of the article is for review, information, and educational purposes. It is not to take the credit for the intellectual property, which is the article itself. The credit goes all to the publisher, which is CNET, and the author, which is Jesse. It's a story by Jesse Orr. Okay, I pronounced his name right. So, that being said, let's continue with the article. Headline is looking at the $2.3 billion MSG's huge immersive screen and advanced audio systems. Here we have the short video of it, and I'm going to give you the link so you'll be able to look at the embedded video, meaning it's a link to the website where the video originates from, so it's what they call embedded. So you'll be able to watch it. The link will be in the description. Link to this article that has the embedded video will be available for you to watch. Now, whether it's lighting up the Las Vegas skyline or blowing up social media with memes, MSG Sphere will be hard to miss. The first of its kind venue opens this fall, and its creators say it aims to revolutionize entertainment experiences. For it to do this, they have developed brand new audio, video, and camera systems. It had an opportunity to visit their Burbank testing ground called Big Dome to experience some of these innovations. Now, Burbank is a city in California, and not in Nevada, as far as I know. Now, it is definitely not an area of Los Angeles. Their most recent developments has to do with the Sphere's audio system. Acoustically, the Sphere is about as challenging as it gets. To conquer the echoes, MSG Ventures partnered with a company called Holopilot. Holopod, which using a technique called sound field synthesis to develop an audio system for Berlin's echoey subway system. Here you see a picture of the Sphere immersive sound powered by hollow plots from Sphere Entertainment. And the article is the pictures provided by Siemens. The result of the Sphere immersive sound powered by hollow plot. The demos provided show how precise a sound system could be. Depending on where it stood, it could hear the same dialogue in three different languages: English, Chinese, and Arabic. It could hear different instruments highlighted in the same song. In the final demo, they played audio from an actor. Um, and it sounded like the actor had walked right up and whispered in my ear. And you see another one that says beamforming custom content. And this is Sphere's beamforming audio system visualized from Sphere Entertainment and provided by CETA, as in this picture is. MSG's Ventures team members have been experimenting with all other senses as well. They demoed an air cannon that could be used to create wind effects and hinted that things like humidity, temperature, and even smell could be used for artistic effects. Now, here's something that was going to probably blow your mind. It's been theorized that, well, first of all, we do know that sound has frequency. So, in terms of a pitch, frequency has to do with the energy expended over an area of a distance. Right? Just like in electronics, telecommunications, the stronger the signal, the more power it requires, which means the shorter the distance at that same rate of frequency that can be sent out. So, in other words, the lower the frequency, the farther the distance can be sent out. Well, sound works similar to telecom signals. Okay? So here's the thing: sound and telecom power in telecom electronics uses a frequency. Okay? Now, sound has a frequency and pitch. Okay? Its output and application is different, but its power source is similar with a similar concept. Now, what's very interesting is that just like smell, you can use all of your senses to interpret information is done by whatever sense. So, for example, sound is by the ears, taste by the tongue, right in the mouth, and obviously seeing something with your eyes. Okay, well, that's extremely straightforward, right? What's not straightforward and mind blowing is the fact that frequencies of sound is possible to be tasted. It's been theorized that sound frequencies of sound can give off, just like sound can vibrate. Frequencies of sound, just like in, for example, in space and string theory, uh, has gives off. So it has a frequency. Everything has a frequency. Right? It has energy. Has a frequency. It can be heard. Just like sound can be heard, it can also be felt. Well, sound also can somehow give off a visual display in terms of a color spectrum. But also, it can be somehow perceived through taste. So, it's a long story to explain it. Basically, it's been theorized, and I'm not saying this is true because I haven't proved it to myself yet. But it's been theorized that actually sound can be tasted. Just like you can feel the vibrations. So it's basically like sound has energy and the kinetic energy or whatever type of energy is translated through a stationary or moving object, and therefore you have a vibration. Okay. What about sound? Of course, has can be perceived through your ears as well as felt through vibration. Vibration is the translation of energy from its frequency to a kinetic energy. Okay, so just like that, frequencies also can move, can actually push things through because there's energy through it. Just like that pitch has a frequency. Well, it's possible that can also be tasted. Okay, so anyway, colors also possibly can be tasted. And the reason why this is just a theory. I'm not saying it's true or not true. I'm just saying this is a theory. Is that because it has a frequency, its frequency can be translated either in a visual or auditory way. But because of its interaction, right? Just like, for example, vibration, you can feel it vibrating, and sound can be felt vibrating in an object, right? Well, light does have a physical. Light can also be physically. It is energy, like a laser, light amplified, stimulating the emission of radiation, right? That's what laser, the acronym laser stands for. Guess what? That laser energy has an energy at a certain. Now, this is something where you feel it. It has a temperature, and it's based upon stimulating it. So, laser basically also has a frequency, also has energy. Right? So, I'm not going to go into the mathematics or the precise physics behind this. But basically, the frequency of a 5G signal, a 4G signal, uses what's called um, it's called beam forming, just like this one here with the sound. Well, it's also using basically in 5G, it's using a laser, just like 4G does, and it's trying to triangulate the signal. Well, there's an energy there, so that laser, its energy can be measured in terms of visual representation, audio representation, or it can translate its energy into a physical. It's like sound can be translated over into a vibration. It can be translated over into heat energy. Well, because uh, energy can be felt through a vibration, right? Such as vibration in terms of this energy moving something else, right? It's been theorized that sound can be tasted and light can be tasted. Why? Because of frequency. So the translation of energy and the interaction between a solid physical object and its frequency itself, according to the theory, I'm not saying it's right or wrong again. I'm just saying this is the theory, saying that you can actually, it's possible to taste its frequency. So anyway, if you look at religious literature, because this is not a sermonette, so I'm not going to go into explaining this. But if you look at religious literature, it talks about that when people sing, there's a smell to it, there's a taste to it. What do you think it is? Okay. That pretty much, assuming that you believe what's put in the religious text, you can see that that is theoretically possible at the highest levels. It suffices to say, and this is something I won't go into, but especially for the purpose of this article, it Suffice it to say that there's more to perceive with just the five senses, meaning there's more senses than the five senses for one. And for two, there's more to be perceived uh, around you. There's more like physical things to be perceived, but you can't perceive it. For example, one example is the sound frequency is too high or too low. You can't perceive it. Just like a dog, they can perceive much higher frequencies. And then there's other things that can't be perceived if it's too low by a human being, but it exists. Just like you can't see microscopic things, but it exists. You see, there's a lot more things that exist, but you just can't perceive it through your senses. Okay? Anyway, that's basically what that is. Just like electricity, you don't really see it unless you see some sort of like spark. The interesting thing with sparks, it can be visually interpreted in its color spectrum. So you see, it's very interesting. And also, when you have the spark, you see something and you hear something. What would happen if the electricity went into your mouth? You're gonna feel it, alright? So reality is that there's more to this than just a regular as it's perceived. But anyway, that's something for you to discover with your own research. I'm just telling you what I've. Now, anyway, going back to the article here. To wrap it up, we got an experience of a curved immersive screen that was 1/4 scale model of the Vegas sphere. And the closest thing I compared to is VR, which is, just in case you're not familiar with the acronym, that's virtual reality, which is basically like 3D immersible, where it's projecting on a 3D screen with a much more intense graphic resolution and graphic color. So that's what VR does. I could tilt my head all the way up and still not reach the end of the screen. When they played up from different scenes, it felt like it was being transported. Some of the tests showed experimenting with different camera moves, some of which felt more natural than others. One shot from the front seat of a roller coaster in particular felt uncannily real, could potentially cause some motion sickness. Yeah, with the VR, um, it's not recommended to use it more than maybe a half an hour to an hour. It's too intense. It's kind of like too much stimuli in the brain. It's an overload, basically. I'm not too keen on VR, but AR is much less intensive. It also projects a 3D screen from 3D image from the screen, and you can interact with the screen from the image. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but in detail. But basically, it's interacting with the screen and moving it, almost like you have a remote control, like you can move remote control and control it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. These experiments helped the MSG Sphere team zero in on what sorts of visual experiments work best given the unique size and shape of the display. The team also invented its own camera called Big Sky to produce content for its enormous screen. And they end with saying the MSG Sphere. By the way, the picture here is the MSG Sphere lights up in the Vegas skyline, courtesy of Getty Images and provided by the publisher of the article, which is CNET. Now, the MSG Sphere in Las Vegas opens this fall with a concert by U2, followed by shortly after a film presentation by Darren Aronofsky entitled Postcard from Earth. Tickets on Sphere website are listed between $49 and $199. To see the Sphere in action, check out the video in this article, which I told you before you can see. Just to give you a little preview, that's basically what it is. It's super intense. Um, Probably the closest thing, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it's probably something like, I don't know if you've heard of this, it's called 4DX. It's not really new. It's been out since the early 2010s. Basically, what you have is surround sound, vibrating speakers on the seats, and then with the glasses, you have the 3D picture that's projected out from the screen that you can see with the 3D glasses. And then they have this optional thing where next to the seat, where you can shoot out water from the side of the seat, so it should be turned off. Actually, this idea isn't new because I think I saw something in like 2008 where they were. This was something fairly new that they were doing. So anyway, a lot of this isn't so much the engineering of it; it's so much as the delay is really in implementation. Okay, so anyway, so that's our second article here. Now let's switch gears to AI. Okay? Now before we talk about this article, as a disclaimer, I do want to mention that the purpose of this review is for review, information, and education purposes. It's not to take credit for the intellectual property which belongs to the publisher, which is Stockholm, and to the author, which is Shaheen Gafri, if I pronounced the person's name right. That being out of the way, let's start with the article. Why Meta is giving away extremely powerful AI model. I do want to say that they're not the only one who's doing this because they had ChatGPT, which is from an AI platform called OpenAI, which is basically the software. Whenever you hear a term like open, it refers to that the code is open source, which is not a new term because it's been out since I think I've heard about this since the early 2000s. So basically, it just means open source. Basically means that anybody can have access to the code and see what makes it what it is, and then use the code to make their own. Okay? So the code is not hidden; it's open source. And what they do with open source is they take the code and they take the original code and then customize the code, edit the code according to what the needs of the project is. Right. Here in front of you, see a picture here. It says why Meta is giving away its extremely powerful AI model, and then it looks like the person who took the photo is Paige Vickers slash Vox and Getty Images. And so last week, Meta made a game-changing move in the world of AI. At the time when other leading AI companies such as Google and OpenAI are closely guarding their secret sauce, which is like code, methodology, Meta decided to give away for free the code that powers the innovative new AI large language model Llama 2. That means other companies can now use Meta's Llama 2 model, which some technologists says is comparable to ChatGPT and its capabilities to build their own customized chatbots. Now, what was it? Microsoft has their own, Google has their own, and then something called ChatGPT has one. They also have one as well. I don't remember the name of it. I have it here in my browser. It's called chat.openai.com. That's what it is. Then they have another one that's also another one. It's called Chat Sonic or Write Sonic. So yeah, that's another one. Okay. So anyway, just to give you some background on that, Llama 2 could challenge the dominance of ChatGPT with broke records for being one of the fastest growing apps of all time. But more importantly, its open source nature adds new urgency to an important ethical debate over which should control AI and whether it can be made safe. As AI becomes more advanced and potentially more dangerous, it It's better for society if the code is under wraps, meaning limited to the staff of a small number of companies, or should it be shared with the public so a wider group of people can hand in shaping the transformative technology? Now, for my interpretation, there's two ways of looking at it. One is if too many people, if the public knows what it is, they can make something that's dangerous, such as they make it the wrong way, or they have an evil intention where they're too good at it, or something of that effect, which is used for an evil purpose, or you could have one that's used for, or the other flip side is that only if certain people have it, they can regulate it better. It's difficult to know which one's better, but that's what they're implying. Now, top tech companies are taking different approaches. And Meta's Llama 2 announcement, Mark Zuckerberg posted on Instagram of himself smiling with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, announcing the two companies' partnership on the release. Zuckerberg also made the case why it's better for leading AI models to be, quote, open source, unquote, which means making the technology's underlying code largely available for anyone to use. He said open source drives innovation because it enables many more developers to build with new technology. Wrote Zuckerberg, uh, wrote Zuckerberg wrote in a separate Facebook post, and he said it also improves safety and security because when software is open, more people can scrutinize it to identify and fix potential issues. So this is another way of looking at it. Okay? Now, what actually happened? See, that's why it says can and not actually does or did. The verdict is still out on that. So just because it can doesn't mean it will. You know what I mean? Sort of like in theory it works this way, but in reality, how does it really work? Well, the move is being welcomed by many AI developers, researchers, and academics who say this will give them unprecedented access to build new tools or study systems that would otherwise be prohibitively expensive to create. Cutting-edge large language models like those ones that power ChatGPT can cost tens of millions of dollars to create and maintain. He said, I'm just bracing myself to see what kind of progress can happen, said Nanzine Rajani, a researcher led to the open source IA platform called Hugging Face, which collaborated on Meta on the release of Rajani, wrote a post on Twitter assessing Llama 2's capabilities when it first came out and told Vox, we will be able to uncover the secret ingredients about what it actually takes to build a model like GPT-4. Now, this idea has worked well with open source because, for example, Linux, which is an offshoot of Unix. So the way it works for operating systems is you have a core file that runs the system part of the operating system, okay? And that's called the kernel. That's KERNEL, kernel. So it has a core file. Basically, what it did was it took its operating system from Linux, modified it, and made Linux. Now, what happened was they said with Linux, they said, okay, we're going to make this open source too. The result was that people were able to make Linux customized for their purpose. Okay. Now, that basically what happened was that it made their operating system to work better for the needs of the people who did it. Okay? Or made it better for certain groups of people, depending on how you got this newer version of Linux as in a customized version, because they changed the code around to customize it according to how they need it. Now, it says, but open sourcing AI comes with major risks. Some of the biggest players in the field, including Microsoft-backed OpenAI and Google, have been limiting how much of the AI systems are public because of what they cite as grave dangers of these technologies. One analogy you could use is sort of like dangerous chemicals like uranium, like anything that's inherently very dangerous, and someone's using it the wrong way, either because of evil or because they're incompetent, basically that causes a problem. So, some technologists are increasingly worried about the hypothetical doomsday scenarios in which the AI could outsmart human beings and inflict harm, like releasing a biological superweapon or causing other havoc in ways that we can't fully imagine. OpenAI's co-founder Ilya Sutskever told The Verge in February that his company was, quote, flat out wrong, unquote, when it shared details about the models more openly in the past, because if AI becomes intelligent as humans one day, reaching what some call AGI or artificial general intelligence, it would be unwise to share that with the masses. Well, there is something to be said about that, because anything that has potential to be dangerous if it's misused. Okay, for example, electricity. Nothing wrong with it inherently. But if you misuse it, it can kill you. Fire. I mean, there's several examples you can use. Fire. It can burn and kill you. Okay, chemicals are either poisonous, or they're acidic, or they're basic, where they also can do bodily harm and basically can disable you or kill you as well. Okay, tools. Hammer, screw, nails, right? Or even something sharp like a knife, right? Butcher knife, hunting knife. Okay, also a gun. Gun has legitimate usages. Target practicing, hunting, but if you misuse, you can kill people. This is the same kind of analogy I'm talking about with AI. What we don't want to do is put in the hands for people who are not competent or are evil. Now, question is, who's watching the watchers? You know what I'm saying? Or who's watching the regulators? So it's always the people you don't expect will do something actually ends up doing something. So that's what it is. While we may be far off from AIs that are capable of causing real human destruction, we have already seen AI tools from open source community being misused in other ways. That's what I'm talking about. For example, soon after Meta released its first Llama model, strictly for research use in February, it leaked on another Anything Goes online message board, and this number 4 and the letters capital C, lowercase a, h, lowercase a, lowercase n, sorry. Where is first, it was used then to create chatbots that spewed hateful comment, like racial slurs, in some cases, some graphic violence. Um, that's a social issue. That's not more of a real. That's a political and social issue as opposed to a real bona fide problem. So that's debatable, in my view. Quote, we take the concerns seriously and put a number of things in place to support a responsible approach to building with Llama 2, wrote Ahmed Abdallah, is VP of Generative AI at Meta, in an email to Vox. Those measurable include, quote, red teaming, unquote, pressure testing the model before it's released by feeding it prompts expected to generate a, quote, risky output, unquote, such as about ones about criminal conduct and hateful content, Al Dali said. Meta also fine-tuned its model to mitigate against this kind of behavior and put out new guidelines barring certain illegal and harmful uses. Meta says it will continue to fine-tune its model for safety after its release. Well, when technology is released and refined in the open, we believe it ultimately leads to more transparent discussions, increased responsiveness to addressing threats, and increased iteration in building more responsible AI and technologies. Okay? Al Dell said. Some experts point out, for example, that we had the problem of misinformation even before AI existed in its current form. What matters more at this point, they say, is how the misinformation is distributed. Princeton computer science professor Arvind Naradian, Nar- Narayan told Vox that, quote, the bottleneck for bad actors isn't generating misinformation, it's distributing it and persuading people, unquote. He added, quote, AI, whether open source or not, hasn't made those steps any easier, unquote. So it's like anything else, it can be misused, but the question is, what's more likely if it's open source to be misused or used? And it's difficult to answer that question because how do you know how people are going to use things? Um, Probably for the people in the know, they can probably estimate the probability, but they'll have to consider the ethical issues involved in that. So that's not something that I can comment on because I'm not really clear on how that would work in practice. So I'll let the companies update us on that. To try to contain the spread of misinformation, the companies creating AI models can put some restrictions on how their programs can be used. Meta, for example, has some rules barring users from using Llama 2 to promote violence or harassment, but those rules will likely prove difficult to enforce. It is also worth noting that Llama 2 isn't fully open. Meta didn't release the training data used to teach the latest model, which is a key component of any AI system. Researchers say that it's crucial to measuring bias, that is, in AI systems. Lastly, Meta requires companies with over 700 million monthly users, so basically only a handful of fellow tech giants like Google, to ask Meta's permission before using the software. So there should be something, I would say, as a safeguard. I think that's possible, but how they go about doing it, I guess I would have to wait to see to hear more about it. Still, overall, Llama 2 is the most open source AI project we've seen recently from a major tech company, which brings up the question of how other companies will respond. So, what exactly is the case for and against a more open source AI world? And in what direction do we seem to be moving forward, especially given Meta's recent announcement? Open source can lead to more innovation. If you're a casual user of AI tools like ChatGPT, you may not see the immediate benefits of open sourcing AI models. But if you're an AI developer or researcher, the introduction of open source LLMs or Llama 2 opens up a world of possibilities. And they said, it's a huge deal, says Anton Shrenikov, a co-founder and head of the technology of the AI startup Chroma, which builds databases that developers plug into AI systems to customize with their data, facts, and tools. For someone like Chernikov, using Llama 2, which could allow the company to give its users more control over how data is used. And he says, now you don't have to send any data outside of the system. You can run it 100% internally on your own machines, says Chernikov, who gave the example of doctors who don't need to expose patients' medical records out to a third party. Quote, your data is no longer has to go anywhere to get these fantastic capabilities. Unquote. Shrenikov said he's is personally just started using Llama 2 and is still testing out how well it works with the company's technology. It's too early to see exactly how out Llama 2 will be used, but Meta's AI Al Dolly says it sees a range of possibilities in the creation of chat-based agents and assistants that help improve productivity, customer service, and efficiency for businesses that may not be able to access and deploy this technology otherwise. There's also self-interest here for improving Meta's own products. If Meta puts its AI models into the wild, the open source community of outside engineers will improve its models, which Meta can then use to build the in-app tools that the company has said it's working on like business assistant chatbots. This way, Meta doesn't have to put all of its resources into catching up to OpenAI and Google, which are further along in putting generative AI tools into their main product line. Now, the business assistant chatbots is basically like it will write content for you. I know that because I've seen that. The Chat GPT, the Right Sonic, essentially does that. It gives a different name, but it's essentially doing the same thing. And also, for the Chat GPT style stuff, it has something called prompts. So it uses that as well. Basically, the prompts basically says, okay, for each topic, here's a predefined, pre-written stuff. And companies will do that instead of having to hire someone else, and also for taking the time to try to come up with content, such as what they call copywriting, which is advertising, written advertising. Open source AI will tap into the intelligence of the masses, and intelligence of the masses is in quotes. Some leading experts think that AI models are open source that could become smarter and less ethically flawed overall. By open sourcing AI, more people can build on them and improve them. The open source AI company Stability AI has already created a model called Free Willy, and Free Willy is in quotes. It builds on top of Llama 2. It quickly became popular and now outperforms Genesis Llama 2 in some tests. That has led it to the rise of the top of the Hugging Faces leaderboard in open source AI models. He said people outside of Meta are beating Meta in its own performance and its own models that they carefully collected and curated over the years. They were able to do it in a week, says Rajani. It's very hard to beat the intelligence of the masses. And I think that's pretty straightforward because you can have the top engineers, but they're not going to be able to think of everything. And then meanwhile, while it's open source, you can take the same code, assuming it has the requisite and minimum competency as far as coding is concerned. Because the fact that he's able, people have add their own ideas and methods, it's going to be the net effect. It's going to be more than just what was made previously. Remember something, nobody can think of everything, so that's what it is. It's a collaborative effort. Meanwhile, the AI community has a strong history of open sourcing knowledge. Google built and publicly shared the Transformer model, which is a neural network. This is what it is. This is how they're going to share the information. I heard about this actually about 4 or 5 years ago, so this is not a new idea. It just takes time to implement this. So it uses a neural network that understands context like language by tracking relationships between parts of data, like words in a sentence. The model has become foundational in cutting-edge AI models. It's used in many applications, including ChatGPT. The T in GPT stands for Transformer. Okay. Open source models allow researchers to better study the capabilities and risks of AI and stop the concentration of power in the hands of a few companies. Princeton professor Arvind Narayan said, pointing out the risk of technological monoculture. And he says monoculture has catastrophic consequences. He said. And the same model says GPT-4 uses thousands of millions of apps. Any security vulnerability in the model, such as jailbreak, can affect all those apps. And the term jailbreak actually is originally came from this idea in unlocking a feature that was locked, specifically in phone and hardware. Historically, experts point out that AI has blossomed as a field because company researchers, academics, and other experts have been willing to share notes. Well, one of the reasons why data science and AI is a massive industry is actually because it's built on a culture of knowledge sharing, said Run Manchori, is co-founder of Human Intelligence, a nonprofit developing accountable AI systems. And he said, I think it's really hard for people who aren't in the data science community to realize how much we just give each other. Moreover, some academics say that open source models allow researchers to better find not just security flaws, but qualitative flaws in the large language models, which have been proven to perpetuate bias, hallucination, and other problematic content. So basically the large language model basically allows it to communicate things through natural language. So the prompts and the communication asking the language model the question and the output is through a language, human language. So there are many languages that are available in ChatGPT. Moreover, some AI academics say that open source models allow researchers to better find out not just security flaws, but more qualitative flaws, meaning something that explains the quality of something. And large language models, like I said, which have been proven to perpetuate bias, hallucination, problematic content. Okay, sorry. While companies can test some of these biases beforehand, it's difficult to anticipate every negative outcome until these models are out in the wild. Some researchers have argued this might be better where you have a supercomputer calculating this stuff. We don't you don't want a supercomputer gaining the capability of an AI. What you want to do is it somehow number crunching or somehow logically crunching possibilities. He said, I think there needs to be a lot more research done about what point vulnerabilities can be exploited. There needs to be auditing and risk analysis and risk of paper. All those can only be done if you have a model that is open and studies this, John. When they said risk of paper, they say paper, they're not referring to physical paper, they're talking about formal written study, in this case scientific study, has a thesis and can be tested out. Okay, that's called paper. Mainly just a thesis, a supported thesis. Okay? Open source AI can also go terribly wrong. Even the most ardent supporters of open AI models acknowledge there are major risks. And exactly how AI could go wrong runs the spectrum of from more easily faking people's identities to wiping out humanity, at least in theory. The most pressing argument in this scenario is that AI does reach some kind of artificial general intelligence. It could then one day outsmart humans in ways we're not able to control. Okay, now, what they were referring to earlier is something called deepfake. Basically, what it does is it tries to copy a picture, make it look exactly like something else. So that's the picture, okay, and then the audio. And then what it does, like the picture and the audio, you make a video. It's going to look like and sound like exactly like something, whatever it's called. That's called a deep fake. And that's something that is already possible, and it can be dangerous in terms of hurting people's reputation or other fallout that comes with that. Now, um, in recent Senate hearing, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman told Congress that with quote all of the dangers of AI and fear of us, that you really have to keep a careful eye on. This is on the absolute bleeding edge of capabilities. Unquote. The easier it is for regulators to control. The more oversight, the easier it is to control. On the other hand, even Altman acknowledged the importance of allowing the open source community to grow. He's suggesting setting some sort of limit so that when a model meets certain quote, capability thresholds unquote, for performing specific tasks, it should be forced to get a license from the government. That's something I'm going to ask you guys to weigh in on when it comes to political social issues. Uh, that's something difficult to assess. The reason why it's difficult to assess not because of the social fallout, but because who can see the future. Anyway, so they said that's one that's one on which some proponents of open source seem to agree if we reach the point when AI models get close to overtaking humanity, then maybe we can pump the brakes on the open source. Yes, of course, as long as it's not too late to do so. But the challenging question with AI is, at what point do we decide that it's too powerful to leave unfettered? And if the genie is out of the bottle at the point, will it be impossible to stop the progress of AI? Those questions are impossible to answer with certainty right now. But in the meantime, open source AI is here, and while there are real immediate risks as well as ones who could snowball down, there are also clear benefits of all of us having a wider group of people thinking about it. So, as you said, that could be good or that could be bad. As far as making software better, it's better. It's good. The more oversight you have in something, the more input you have to making things software better, the greater the potential to making it better. Okay. Now, I've got a couple more articles, but I think I'll do it for tomorrow or later tonight. Maybe later tonight instead of tomorrow. I've got a couple articles. Maybe I'll do that for tomorrow. Maybe I'll do it for tonight. Because tomorrow I'm going to be uploading I believe it's part 6 or part 7 of my marketing course. Well, not my course, but of a marketing course. So anyway, so you've seen those 3 articles here. Now I have a limited time for these because I have several uploads that I do, several projects that I'm working on, so I only have a certain amount of time for each. But just some major articles that's food for thought. I did like to share with the public so they can be informed and be able to get objective information, as in just facts about it, and come to their own conclusion. I do believe it's important to be informed, which is the main reason why I do this, but also for people to be up to date with stuff as well. Anyway, that will do it for at least for this part of the day, and possibly until tomorrow. Okay, so I would like to thank you for watching the video. Please click like on the video. That way you'll be pushed through the algorithm of both YouTube, and I'll be uploading this to Rumble. So if you on Rumble I have the same handle, so please click subscribe, like and subscribe to the video as well. Okay. So if you haven't already, please click subscribe. That way you'll have access to all the videos on the channel. And also, if you haven't done it already, please click the bell button so that you'll be notified of all of my future videos. I will have a membership in the future in which I will go into greater detail about certain topics, which have certain links from the articles where we can go deeper into that. Such as I could go deep about one type of scientific technology that relates to the article, relates to the technology that's being talked about, or depending on the type of article, whatever that knowledge is, go deeper on it, and also answer questions. I think probably this weekend I'll probably be doing a live broadcast in which people will be able to do a question and answer, give their input on what else they would like to see. So that's basically in the woodworks, where I don't know if I want to say it, pipeline. I guess not the woodworks, although it comes out of the woodworks in the pipeline. So I'm going to be working on that. Hopefully, I'll have that set up for this weekend, not only specifically for the live stream, but also be able to have a membership available to you guys on YouTube and Rumble at some point. I'm not exactly sure because Rumble doesn't work exactly like YouTube, but anyway. So I do want to again thank you for watching the video. I wish you a great day. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time.